Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on is it trailer number 2 or trailer number 3 for the live-action Ghost in the Shell feature film, tentatively starring, well, actually starring Scarlett Johansson. And I've seen listings cropping up all day all over YouTube, copies of this particular trailer. Some are listing it as trailer number 2, some are listing it as the third trailer. I think the ones who are listing it as the third trailer may be mistakenly considering those initial 5 teasers that we got that were only like 5 seconds in length. Some channels put them all together as one video. I think they're loosely considering that to be the first official trailer, whereas it really wasn't. It was just teasers, and the first official trailer followed. And so by that reasoning, this actually aligns to rounding out as the third trailer, whereas I believe it is actually the second. And for anyone who has been following my content, my coverage of this particular film, you may know that I've been very disparaging of it, and I've been really sort of downtrodden on it and depressed about it because I was first and foremost very upset with the casting of Scarlett Johansson as the Major, Motoko Kusanagi as she is known in the original manga, the 1995 anime film adaptation, as well as the 2 TV anime versions, Standalone Complex, both of its seasons, as well as Arise and everything like that. You look at ScarJo and she doesn't immediately strike you as being of Japanese origin, of potentially being given that name in birth, or perhaps given at a later time assigned that name, depending on what her origins are and her history and the backstory of the Major, all that kind of stuff, which has come heavily into play in all of the various incarnations. We have a Major who is soul-searching, trying to find her place in the world, trying to equate what exactly that divide between technology and humanity is, living in a very offshoot sort of not too distant future where the technology has gone leaps and bounds, very, Blade Runner-esque, arguably, as we see visually in the trailer, where people are capable of implanting their brains in a cybernetic brain, chassis hybrid, a cybernetic body, and all this kind of stuff. And she's very much wondering, what is the ghost? What is the soul? And all these kinds of things, and very much soul-searching. And these are some of the aspects I've largely touted as being concerning to me because I wasn't getting any vibe of any sort of depth of character like that in any of the trailers. In the first trailer, I think one of the things I harped on the most, I said I pretty much loved all of it. The spectacle, the visuals, everything like that. Even the sort of parroting shots, harkening back to the original 95 anime film. But the thing that I really didn't like was ScarJo. I didn't like her sort of monosyllabic, deadpan line delivery, which some people excused as being, well, she is supposed to be a machine, she's supposed to be sort of robotic and everything like that. But that's not the Major. The Major is, at the center of what makes her the character that she is her humanity, is this soul-searching, these questions that if she were so robotic, she perhaps would not have the desire to learn more about herself and the world and how all of that jives together and everything like that. And I was just getting no presence of that. Just the deadpan delivery just irked me to no end. And, so looking at that first trailer, she was my biggest problem with it. I feel like a lot of the complaints I've had about the footage that we've seen every time we've had an iteration of it released, some of the biggest complaints I've had were somewhat quelled with this particular trailer. One of my biggest complaints was that lack of soul-searching, and there's a lot of conversational dialogue going back and forth between the Major and the antagonist in the film, which I'm still kind of unclear, who this character is meant to be. He comes across as somewhat of an amalgamation of Kuze from the second gig or second season of Standalone Complex, the TV anime version, as well as the Puppet Master, the antagonist from the original 95 anime film. I have heard from some people that was the intention, that he's supposed to be sort of cherry-picking the best bits of those antagonists and wrapping them all into one character. The only problem with that being, if the story's good and everything like that, that's great. If the film is a success, which I hope it will be, more power to them, but then where do you go after that? If you've taken all the best bits out of each iteration of Ghost in the Shell, from the manga to the anime film to the TV series, where do you go from there? Maybe breaking new ground, telling a new story, creating a new antagonist, villain, whatever, in a future incarnation or sequel or whatever like that, which, okay, that's fine. I really would like to see some new ground being broken within the franchise, which is largely why I was very trepidatious about all of those parroting shots from the Major on the rooftop, removing her long coat and diving off the side, crashing through the window and shooting up the place, and so many of these, different visual aesthetics that very much harkened back to visuals we saw in the original film. I was very much afraid that they were just giving us a sort of carbon copy now in live action form of what that story was. And I'm finding that there is much more than I at first assumed going on, that we see depicted in this trailer with this antagonist speaking about, he's constantly repeating, remember, you must remember, he says it at the start of the trailer, he says it toward the end of the trailer. We have the Major encountering a sort of vision of him that disintegrates in front of her, sort of Tron D-Res-esque, right in front of her eyes. And that idea that he's trying to coax her to remember her own past, or the impression I actually had, because of the repetitive nature of his saying that, remember, you must remember, was I immediately thinking of that very persuasive sort of, if you think of, sort of the profiler mentality in investigation, getting into the minds of people, which Ghost in the Shell can very literally do by, hacking into cyber brains and all that kind of stuff with technology, with the advent of all of that stuff, leaps and bounds that humanity has progressed. Well, of course, you have very high-level hackers. The Major is very much one of her own, and so many members of Section 9, her team, her investigative team, whether they're working for the government as they are in the anime adaptations or for the corporation they allegedly are in this particular live-action film, they all have varying degrees of skills, some more militarily, some more hacker and computer and technology based. The Major is one of them, she's like one of the highest levels. So they can very literally sort of pile into the minds and rip the memories out of or manipulate those aspects of the mind. And we have this antagonist saying, remember, you must remember, time and time again. And it speaks to me that he is trying to persuade her almost to a brainwashing level to conjoin her mentality to his, to manipulate her for some ends. He's talking very much about, as we find there's some question about how she was given this cybernetic body. We've seen hints of this before, and there's some dialogue that we touch upon again where they're saying, there was an accident, you were dying, that was the reasoning for what we did. And he says, again, which we've heard before, they lied to you. They didn't give you, your life. They stole it. Whatever that means exactly, we have the added flavor in this particular trailer of someone saying something along the lines of, it was supposed to be a clean break, eliminate her. Something along those lines, which says to me, there has been some grand cover-up. There is now an impetus for the Major to be questioning her origins, to be soul-searching, to try to find who she is in a somewhat different way than we've seen previously. Now we actually have a driving force that is trying to keep those aspects hidden, and this is going to motivate her through the interactions she has with the antagonist. It's going to propel her to try to figure that stuff out. So that is a little bit more compelling to me, and it's not maybe the full-on depth that I am hoping for as yet. I mean, it's just a trailer, just hinting at those things. But if these become sort of paramount aspects of the story and her character, it's going to allay a lot of my reservations, story-wise and everything. And I really hope we're going to get a deep and engaging, brilliant story, not just an action fest with plenty of visual flair and everything like that. Another aspect that really stood out to me in this particular trailer that I had previous reservations about was Section 9 itself. I didn't feel like we got enough of that. I was very happy in the first official trailer to get a lot more Bato and to get more of the vibe between he and the Major, the relationship they have, and his supportive nature toward her. She kind of has to win him over, and it seems as though that's something we may see in this particular film. And when that happens, when the other leg drops, he's going to have her back, and that's the Bato I want. And I've been impressed with the way the actor looks. I'm still a little trepidatious about the fact that he does not start out with the ocular implants. It's something added later, and maybe a result of a firefight or a wound in some sort of investigation gone bad. And then he is upgraded and such like that. He should have started the movie just with them, but at the same time, I did express my excitement at that being some, new ground waiting to be broken. And that's one of the things I'm trying to be that much more excited about. The newer aspects, the newer interpretations of the characters and their stories and who they are and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm loosely excited to see just exactly how that happens. I do hope, though, that is not something left to be mostly cursory. I'm hoping that it adds to the depth of who Bato is, and we learn more about him through his having to deal with whatever this wound is and upgrading. Maybe it's a hard decision for him. Maybe it's an easy one. Hopefully these will delve into the character traits of his character. But I love that we're seeing much more, building much more upon that sort of war room, meeting room thing that we saw in the first trailer, and we've seen in some of the snippets here and there. This comes after the Major has witnessed the antagonist de-rezzing in front of her, and she's bringing it to their attention, and someone is speaking about, he's a known terrorist, he's killed before, and of course we cut to the shot where she's leaping off the rooftop, which was my favorite visual in, like, all the cityscape shots and everything. I love all of that stuff, but my favorite visual in this trailer was that more, it was a longer version of that shot where she disrobes of the cloak, she jumps off the rooftop, and when they zoom in on her face as she's falling sort of upside down, if you see the thumbnail for this video, I made that before I actually sat down to record. That's my favorite visual shot, of course, inverted from the way my thumbnail is, but that's my favorite visual shot in the trailer, arguably CG if you look at her face and everything like that. But it was, I have loved, in all the many incarnations of Ghost in the Shell, there is always that shot where she's leapt off the rooftop and she's activating her sort of optical camouflage and everything like that. And it's just, I loved that shot, the way she's looking at the camera, the way she's speaking about taking down the antagonist. And we're having more footage, more roundabout interaction with Section 9 as they're, planning to make whatever move they're going to be making. I believe we see a few new shots of Aramaki, the big ape, the boss of Section 9, as well as the actor, I believe, who's playing Togusa, which if you go back to some of the original sort of character portraits that were, air quotes, leaked back before any, trailer footage was ever shown, the actor playing Togusa, I shared the opinion that he looked a little too old to be Togusa, who's supposed to be the green blood on the team. He's supposed to be the new guy. Very, very small amount of cybernetic upgrades, almost entirely un-cybernetically upgraded. And so he's kind of archaic, but at the same time, he's the humanity. He's the heart and soul of Section 9 because, arguably for those who have been upgraded, they're that much further removed from their humanity, their origins, and that's where that soul searching for the ghost versus humanity, the soul versus technology, that's where that all comes in. And so he is sort of the conscience. He is, again, the heart and soul. And in seeing his, interactivity in this particular trailer, I think he is the one who delivers the line, speaking about the antagonist. He's everywhere. He's all things, he's sort of ubiquitous. And in seeing the actor in the trailer, I dialed back from that, he looks too old, sort of first, initial interpretation. I think I can buy it. And that's the strangest thing for me, somebody who's been as disparaging as I have been about all the footage, all the casting, everything like that. I warmed to the actor who was cast as Bato because he looks like Bato. I warmed to the actor who's playing Aramaki. It's going to be interesting because I don't believe he speaks English so far as I've heard, and I think they're going to be speaking back and forth between, like the Major and Aramaki. He'll be speaking Japanese, she'll be speaking English, and I'm wondering if there's going to be subtitles, how they're going to manage that, if there's going to be a sort of translation matrix that goes on in their cyber brains and that they communicate over digital lines and all that kind of stuff. very curious how that's all going to play out. But I found myself dialing back much more on any of the casting reservations, sort of eschewing aside the biggest one of all, that we could have gotten a Japanese actress to headline as the Major. It's the major gripe, no pun intended, that I've had, and I have banged on and on and on about from day one. But I found myself warming to her portrayal in this trailer, and warming to everyone else's, with the exception of one person in the trailer. But I'll get to that in a moment. For the most part, all of those qualms I had about the deadpan delivery of her dialogue, all of those aspects that I described as being a perceived lack of emotion, that humanity that is very necessary and integral to the Major, that I did not see represented in any of the previous footage, I felt I was beginning to perceive that in this trailer. From her being shocked awake at one point. I don't know if this was after she was upgraded or before so, or what happened exactly. This coincides with the antagonist's voiceover about remembering her family, that she had a family at one point. Again, hearkening back to those mysterious origins that will lead her soul-searching, as well as investigating, trying to find out who this antagonist is, and dealing with the corporate forces that may be trying to take her out, take her away. Much more, especially as she's delivering the dialogue about taking out this antagonist, whomever he may be. And then at the end, I will not let them erase me, or whatever it is that she says, something along those lines, felt much more impactful. Felt much more to me that there was emotion driving it. And so I kind of had to backpedal a little bit and say to myself, look, you complained. she was very monosyllabic the first time out. She was no emotion. You're getting it. You're getting it little by little. Much as you're getting hints and whispers of that soul-searching equivalent, much as you're getting hints and whispers of that dilemma of technology versus humanity versus the soul versus the ghost. There are much more of those things being depicted and represented. And I said, even with all of my qualms and all of the things that were, putting me highly in reserve of not wanting to be too judgmental, all of those things that created those qualms, I'm seeing less of those things, at least for me, being bothersome and worrisome in this trailer. Now, as I said, one person stood out like a sore thumb. That would be Juliette Binoche's nurse character, much as was the case in the previous official trailer. I almost felt like, with everyone involved, when they show her, there's something about it where it's like everything stops dead. And I heard somewhere along the lines, one person who was speaking about the trailers and had taken somewhat of a similar opinion. We're not seeing as many Japanese people involved, and this is a Japanese property, and where is the hearkening back to that and honoring those origins? A lot of the complaints that I myself had, somebody had pointed out, why is this not a Japanese actor or actress playing this role? Why do we have a French chick playing this role? And it was like everything, there was a solid momentum throughout the trailer before and after that, but when you hit her, it's like a speed bump. It's like driving over those spikes when you're trying to leave a parking lot going the wrong way. I was just like, no, get off the screen, please. It's just something about closing in on her. It's stopped everything, and then the momentum picked up again, unrelated to her. Anything that was unrelated to her there was momentum, there was fluidity, there was brilliant visuals and everything. Then we just close in on her face, and we hear her speaking, and it's just like, stop. Everything stops. And that, by and large, was the biggest thing that struck out to me of seeing this trailer that I had any problems with. Now, again, just as a reminder, I'm somebody who's had problems from day one with this. And dare I say, my sister was sitting next to me as I was watching it on my mobile device, the trailer. I watched it like 6 times in a row because I just kind of wanted to soak it in, and I really needed to formulate what I was feeling about it, because I wasn't immediately struck by anything that really bothered me other than Juliette Binoche being in it. I was just trying to align my mind to whether or not I was really digging what I was seeing, what I was perceiving. And as I kept continuing to watch it again and again and again, I found I was not only being more accepting of it, but I was seeing the things that I wanted to see, not in grand design, because it is only a trailer. We are hinted at, given hints toward those aspects that will hopefully come to fruition, and brilliantly, boldly so, in the finished product. I turned to my sister and I said, because she was trying to gauge my reaction, sort of kind of looking out of her periphery, like watching me, like, because she knows that I've had really a bad time emotionally with this film. And she kind of just sort of, lightly asked, so what do you think? It sounds kind of the same to me. I'm not really watching it. I'm listening to you watch it. Sounds like the same deadpan and everything like that. She kind of thought she knew what my reaction was. And it started to dawn on me the more times I was watching it, not only am I having less issues than I had before, but as I am becoming more appraising of that fact, that I'm seeing the things that I wanted, that I asked for, that I said would be necessary to appease me as a Ghost in the Shell franchise fan, I found myself actually starting to really dig it and really get excited for it. And I said to my sister, look, you don't want to know what I think about this. And at first she was like, oh, you hate it, just as you have before. She has had her own trepidation about it, mostly, similarly in the founding to where I have been coming from. Casting aside, I asked for story, and I asked for character. And we got story, character, action, visual flair in an abundance greater than anything we've seen thus far. And I said to my sister, you don't want to know what I think about this. You want to know why? Because I'm actually kind of excited to see this now. A complete 180, I wouldn't say a complete 180 degree turn, but as close as I can get. As someone who's still harping on why couldn't we have like Maggie Q or Rinko Kikuchi playing the Major, ScarJo's starting to warm to me a little bit, or I'm starting to warm to her, as the case may be, because there is some emotion driving her. There is some depth driving her. There is going to be some soul searching involved. There is going to be some questioning of her origins, and thus, in the grand playground, in the grand scheme of things, an extension is that of the the grander design of technology versus humanity versus the soul versus all of that stuff. These are the things I asked for. These are the things I said I needed. These are, I'm actually kind of excited. I'm getting really excited to see this, and I hope it blows the roof off. I hope this brings much more awareness and curiosity into the, origin material, the manga. The 3 original manga releases that there were. The second of which, technically it's the second, but it was the third to be released because it was kind of like the missing chapters, the middle chapters. It was Ghost in the Shell 1.5 Man-Machine Interface. It is the most procedural and akin to the standalone complex anime, which is my favorite iteration over all of them, of Ghost in the Shell. The Major is a dialed back character. She's not as involved in Man-Machine Interface. She's left Section 9 very much akin to how the 95 movie would align toward the end and everything like that. But it's very much the closest of any of the manga versions that marries sort of the same storytelling vibes and look and everything like that. Togusa and Bato going out investigating and everything like that. That, the standalone complex, my favorite version, brought forth, put forth in their depiction. I don't know what to tell you. For people who haven't been able to get past any of that stuff, I've really worked myself to understanding, much as Star Trek has come out with many different iterations and incarnations, many different TV series, many different movies. Some people recast as you know, the original characters from the original series, and there are so many, especially in the science fiction fantasy medium, fantasy genre, there are so many reinventions of different franchises and stories. And I mean, look how many versions of The Wizard of Oz there have been. You know, look how many versions of Alice in Wonderland there have been. It's going to be a new sort of arguably, you know, reboot sequel to Mary Poppins coming soon, from what I've heard. And this is nothing new. Reboots, recreations, remakes, it's nothing new. There's going to be a brand new Scarface that is going to be a more modernized version of the Al Pacino film, which was actually a more modernized remake sort of version of one, I think it was Edward G. Robinson, going back to like the 20s or 30s. And this is something that happens time and time and time and time and time again. You have the original The Fly with Vincent Price. You have the newer one with the cat from Jurassic Park, whose name escapes me off the top of my head. You know, all these things, it's just going to be, and I'm really trying to align my mind to this fact, it's just going to be a new interpretation of that thing you love. And if it succeeds, well, hell yes. If it fails, whether for you personally that you just don't like it, or it fails on a grander scale, it doesn't make money, it's a you know, box office failure, well, guess what? You still have your 3 volumes of the manga, you still have your 3 or 4 novellas, you still have your anime TV version DVDs and everything like that. Plenty of fan fiction, plenty of fan art, and all that kind of stuff are out there. So it's just going to be its own new version of that stuff, and none of that stuff goes away for it. And I've really, again, I've surprised myself at how warmed to it I've become. And so yeah, that is my official reaction overall, rambling on for almost a half hour, of this second, and some people have listed it as the 3rd official trailer for the live-action Ghost in the Shell, starring Scarlett Johansson, among others. I hope it's gangbusters. I hope it blows the roof off and blows my ever-loving mind. With all the story and the characterization and the depth and all those investigative aspects of humanity versus technology, I hope all of that stuff that's hinted at is really at the fore in the finished product. And if it is, I will not be an unhappy camper for it. Otherwise, I'd love to hear from you guys what your interpretations are. If you share my particular opinions or not, you know, love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below. Excited, gangbusters for it, can't wait to see this thing. Do not want anything to do with it at all whatsoever, and boycotting it and everything like that. Anything goes in the comments below. Just love having that conversation. Otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.